Hello everyone, welcome to Module 3, Lesson 2 of Zero to Permit. This is going to be the last lesson within this seminar. And in this module, or more like lesson, we're going to talk about the 7 things that you're responsible for once you get your air permit from the AQMD. So let's get started. Getting your air permit from the AQMD is an inflection point in the whole process. Because when you get your air permit, it means that you're able to successfully demonstrate on paper that your piece of equipment can be constructed and operated in accordance or in compliance with all the rules and regulations of the AQMD. But that's only half of the puzzle. The other half requires you to actually execute on what you said you'll do, in addition to meeting numerous other requirements. Generally, there are 7 things that you will now need to be responsible for once you get your air permit. And so we're going to talk about these 7 items within this lesson. And the first one is that once you get your air permit, you now may be subject to annual emission reporting requirements every year. Now, depending on the emissions of your facility, once you receive your permit from the AQMD, the overall emissions from your facility may go up. And when they increase or they go up, they may exceed the AER reporting thresholds. And if that's the case, then you'll be required to prepare an annual emission report. We actually have the thresholds for the annual emission reporting program listed in the notes section below this module. And you should look at that. But just remember that when you get your permit, or if you get your permit from the AQMD, your piece of equipment or your facility may now exceed the annual emission reporting thresholds, and then if that happens, you'll be required to submit a report each year. Now, very briefly, the annual emission report requires you each year to quantify all the emissions from your facility, and then based on the emissions from your facility, you'll be required to pay fees on those emissions. Now, those reports are due 60 days from the first of each year, and they're similar to taxes. And we've actually talked a lot about annual emission reports quite extensively within Envera Consulting's content library. And so I actually suggest that you go check out all of our other resources within our content library as it relates to annual emission reports. And so the first item here, or the first responsibility, just to wrap up, is that once you get your permit, you may now need to file annual emission reports. The second thing that you'll be responsible for is that you must post your permit within 8 meters of your piece of equipment. Now, under Rule 206, the permit or a copy of the permit must be posted within 8 meters of the equipment. Now, sometimes you may have a facility permit, such as a reclaim and/or Title V permit, and if that's the case, then this facility permit must be kept in a central location and made available to an inspector upon request. And so number 2 is you must post your permit within 8 meters of your equipment, or you must keep your facility permit in a central location. Number 3 is that permits to operate expire and thus must be renewed each year. Permits to operate expire, and the only way to renew them is to pay your annual permit renewal fees. Now, if you don't pay your annual renewal fees, your permit can expire or lapse, and that can lead to significant problems if you want to reinstate your equipment, especially if the regulations have changed since the issuance of your original permit. And so the point to note here is that you want to be sure that you keep your permit current by paying your annual renewal fees. And you typically get an invoice for these fees each year in the mail by the AQMD. So number 3 is be sure that you don't let your permits to operate expire. Number 4 is that a permit to construct will expire after 1 year. Now, this is important to remember, since a permit to construct is the most common type of permit that most people will be applying for. Therefore, if you receive a permit to construct, then you must understand that the permit to construct will expire after 1 year. Therefore, you have 1 year to, quote, construct the piece of equipment. Now, there are going to be cases where a permit to construct can be extended past the 1 year mark. But in general, for that to happen, you must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the AQMD that the delay or the reason why you need to extend past the 1 year mark was sort of outside of your capacity. And so number 4 is that permits to construct expire after 1 year. Number 5 is that permits cannot be transferred from one location to another. Under Rule 209, permits are issued to one applicant at one location and will become null and void if the equipment moves or changes ownership. Now, there are cases where a various locations permit can be issued, and a various locations permit will allow the equipment to move within the AQMD, but various locations permits are outside of the scope of this seminar. So, again, if your facility undergoes a change in either ownership or name, then you want to see if that change causes the permits to become null and void. Generally, name changes don't void permits, but changes in ownerships does. In that case, it's best to talk to the lawyers involved to see if that change was really a name change or a change of ownership. And then the one point that I want to reiterate again is that if the equipment moves from one location to the next, that's the other way that will cause the permit to become null and void. So number 5 is that a permit will become null and void if it changes ownership or it changes location. So you want to be very careful about that. Number 6 is that you must follow the conditions on the face of your permit. Under Rule 204, the AQMD will impose conditions on the face of a permit, and those conditions are placed on your permit to ensure compliance with all the rules and regulations. Therefore, as a permit holder, you must follow these conditions at all times. So therefore, you want to be sure that you read through your permit carefully and you understand how to comply with all of the conditions as they are written on the face of your permit. Now, you may find errors in your permit. That's very common. We see it all the time. And if you do, you must correct those errors as soon as possible. Sometimes if you find errors in your permit and you've had your permit for a significant amount of time, you'll need to apply for a variance in order to operate your equipment properly. And so it's very important that the conditions that are on the face of your permit are correct and they are achievable, so compliance can be achieved, and it's practical to achieve compliance. And like I said, sometimes a variance will be needed to operate your equipment if you have a problem with the conditions on the face of your permit. So number 6 is that you must follow the conditions on your face of your permit. Number 7 is pretty simple, and number 7 is that you cannot alter or falsify your permit or what's on the face of your permit. An air permit is a legal document with requirements that must be complied with at all times. And so you can't deface or falsify anything that's on the face of your permit. And then lastly, number 8, you must read and understand your permit. And we talked about this a few points back, but I'll just talk about it again. So you must read and understand your permit within the context of what must be done on a daily basis in order to operate that piece of equipment in compliance. Now, when you start to have, or when you work at a larger facility with ongoing operations, that can become much harder to do. That is, tracking compliance can be much harder to do because there are so many things that are going on at the same time. And what you'll find is that typically what will go on, especially within a larger operation, typically what will go on within the process may be not exactly the same as what we told the district will happen or will occur. And that's just one of the challenges with operating large facilities with lots of staff. Not everyone in that facility is going to have the same level of understanding as you do when it comes to managing an air compliance program. Therefore, managing an air compliance program at a larger facility can be a real challenge, especially when there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of people. And so you want to be sure that there's systems in place to prevent non-compliance from happening. And so in summary, getting your permit is an inflection point in the process because you move through the permitting process and you've demonstrated to the satisfaction of the AQMD that this piece of equipment can operate in compliance with all the rules and regulations of the air district. Now, there will be other requirements that must be met and maintained as a holder of a permit, and we've talked about some of them in this module. Some of those requirements include, the requirement to file maybe an annual emission report. We talked about how you cannot transfer ownership of a piece of equipment to another facility or another owner. We talked about how you must post your permit within 8 meters of your equipment. We also talked about how you can deface your permit. And we also talked about how you must comply with the conditions on your permit at all times. And important to that point is that you must read through and understand what's on your permit. Now, out of all of this, and we'll say it again, sound like a broken record, but the most important thing that you can do once you receive your permit is read it. And read the information carefully as it relates to your operation. If an inspector were to show up and do an inspection at your facility, the first thing that they will do is ask for your permit. And then the second thing they'll do is they'll actually try to assess to see if what you are doing at your facility is consistent to what is required on your permit. And that's sort of a first test to determine if you're in compliance or you're not. Are you complying with the conditions on your face of your permit? Usually, what we've seen, and it's common, is that if there's a problem with complying with the conditions noted on the face of your permit, then there's going to be a larger problem within the environmental compliance program as a whole. And if the inspector catches on to that, then he or she will try to drill down further to understand what is going on. And so if you can comply with the conditions of your permit as noted on the face, and you can do it from the start, then you're going to be in a much better position in terms of compliance than someone else who cannot demonstrate compliance with the conditions on the face of their permit. And so with that, that's all we have here for our Zero to Permit seminar. We hope that you've enjoyed what we put together. We've hoped that you've learned about the basics of getting an air permit and how to get an air permit from the AQMD, as well as what are your responsibilities once you get your permit. If you have any questions, you can contact us. We have our contact information below. My contact information is below. And like I've said in this seminar, the rules are very black and white. The rules tell you exactly what you can and you cannot do. But the trick, or maybe the art to the whole practice, is that when you try to interpret and implement those regulations within your specific operation or your specific facility, you'll find that the operation will find all the areas of gray that exist within those black and white regulations. And so you'll actually end up managing a lot of gray areas. And like I've said before, your ability to effectively manage those gray areas either by yourself or with a team of other management staff and consultants and lawyers and what have you, the better off you're able to stay in compliance. And a lot of what we do here at Envera Consulting is that we help people manage the gray. And we work with a lot of different staff within organizations to help them manage the gray. Again, thank you. If you have any questions, please send them over to us, and we'll work with you to get you the answers that you need. Again, have a good day. Bye now. 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 Bye now.